The transportation situation in the Philippines is very different than anything that I was ever used to. I was used to getting in a car and driving wherever I needed to. I wasn't really in an area with public transportation. We just went wherever we needed to go in our own car. I get to the Philippines and nobody has a car. Partly that's because of where I was serving, but I was just stunned. Like, how does everyone get around? And you have to really figure it out. If you're not used to the schedules, you really have to figure out where things can pick you up, how far different vehicles can take you places. It was a little hard to figure out at first. I never made any mistakes, but I felt very unsure the whole time I was learning about the transportation in the Philippines. I was worried I would need to go somewhere and get on a vehicle and then they wouldn't be able to take me there and then I'd be even more lost than I was before. So I had to be humble and take things slow and figure out how to do it. They have these big buses known as seres that they use, and they'll travel all across the island, and they'll do long distances along the highway. So those were really useful when we knew we had to go long distances, and they have the terminals for that. But they also had these little buses, too, that were, like, not as well put together. They seemed a lot older and not as nice. And we mostly used those on the island of Bohol. And those were always so fun to ride on because they were still a bus, but they would have maybe 30 or 40 seats. But, like, the windows they wouldn't have windows, or, like, the door would be open. And it just felt a lot more natural to be on a bus like that in the Philippines when you're driving along the coast and you see palm trees and the ocean and people are bringing, like, animals or they're bringing, like, bamboo on the bus. It just felt more natural than having this thing that looked kind of manufactured and like it came from, like, Europe or something. I don't know. So I like the little buses better. And then they had these things called jeepneys that were everywhere. And these are converted army vehicles that can hold maybe 20 passengers, 10 to 20 depending on the size and how closely you squish in, because they can keep fitting more and more people. And we would ride on those, and those would take us further distances, but not nearly as far as, like, the buses would. We would take the jeepneys if we had to go to a different part of town, to a different neighborhood, those kind of things. So we'd still travel a little bit of ways, maybe 5 or 10 minutes at the most. We really wouldn't spend too much time on it. And that was always fun to ride on. I always wished that I could ride on the back because they would have 1 or 2 people that would, usually if it was a big enough jeepney, that they would have someone working and they would ride on the back, hanging out, just holding on to the top, and they're kind of sticking out into traffic. And I always thought that would be so fun, but it wasn't really proper for me to do that. So I never got the chance, but I thought that would be so cool. And then they also have these things called tricycles, and they're motorcycles attached to these big metal boxes that serve as sidecars. And you can fit maybe 4 people inside, and then if there's anyone on a lap, you can fit more people, and you can fit people sitting side saddle on the back of the motorcycle with the driver. So we could totally fit like 10 people depending on their size and how close together you sat. And those were always really fun, a really good way to get to know people because you're just so close. And those were for really short distances, and you usually go just whatever distance you needed to, and you could be dropped off exactly where you needed to go, so that was always really handy. And sometimes you'd start to recognize the motorcycle drivers, the tricycle drivers, just because there was only so many, and there was plenty of them, but if you rode them often enough, you would get to know them, and that was always really fun. The motors were my favorite. We got to ride on motorcycles, and they're called habal-habals, and that's renting someone privately on a motorcycle to take you anywhere you need. And it was always really expensive, but you could go anywhere. You could go in the middle of nowhere and get dropped off there, and it was always so fun to ride on a motorcycle. No helmet, no leather or anything like that. You could just, like, ride and enjoy the breeze, enjoy the company, kind of wave at people as you pass by. It was always really fun. I think for the most part. Traveling wasn't a chore. It wasn't something you just had to do like it is in the U.S. It's like, oh, no, I have to commute. I have to go to work every day, and it's a 20-minute drive. Or, oh, I have to go to school, and I have to walk there. I felt like transportation in the Philippines was always fun because of the wind in your face and the people you met and just the experiences that you got to have while you were transporting.